Good morning, you all. I had the honor a few Wednesdays ago to be assigned the Old Testament reading. I had chosen that night Ecclesiastes 7th chapter, 14 verses, the first 14. And at that time, I thought that's going to make something I could talk about for my next sermon. So we're going to expand on that just a little bit this morning, looking a little deeper into what the preacher, whether it's Solomon, who's the writer there, or some other wise man writing in Solomon's manner, I'm not really sure. But we're going to discover a little bit of what he was talking about. And that then leads us to this morning's title of our sermon, which I will present to you, the wisdom that we try to avoid. Many of us at some point think things used to be better. Life was simpler. People were better. The times were better. But it tells us in Ecclesiastes 7, the 10th verse, that way of thinking isn't wisdom. And that might surprise us. And then it actually shows us why. But we'll get to that verse later. So beginning in the first verse, the first 4 verses, it is better to go to a house of mourning than to go to a house of feasting. For death is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of pleasure. Sorrow is better than laughter. It's actually not because these things necessarily feel better, but because they tell the truth about. And Friday night, I coughed literally for 3 straight hours. I couldn't catch my breath. And in moments like that, everything kind of just strips away. And I don't control it like I think I do. And that's kind of what the preacher is talking about here in the beginning of this chapter. Death is not better emotionally, but it forces reality on you. Death speaks to us in ways that birth cannot. At a funeral, you're reminded life ends. Time is limited. Hopefully, you're reminded that what you're doing here actually matters. It's not something that you hear at a baby shower. You certainly shouldn't. And birth, in a sense, is just the opposite because it celebrates potential. But death reveals reality. All of this forces you to contemplate your life, your legend, how are you going to be remembered? On my calendar, on my phone, I have a birthday, born day, death day calendar. So I have that Eugene Sudduth died in 1963. I never even met him. I was born in 65. Regardless, there are many here that worshiped with him at that same time that I rarely think about or maybe even know. What difference does it make if just 50, 60 years later, most of the people don't even know you? With no disrespect to any other wonderful names in this congregation, how many are here that are a Sudduth? How many are here that are a Warren? How many are here that are of an Engel? There's many of us here that come from names that are long in the past that maybe aren't even spoken any longer. If I can take credit for sons-in-law, I have 15 churchgoers or members from my marriage with Teresa. That's how I'm going to be remembered. The grandchildren of my grandchildren someday may never speak my name again. But if they're here worshiping in this building or a building like it, then my legacy lives on. My life was good. My life had a purpose. And it isn't necessarily just your family members. You might influence someone you work with. You might actually put something good out there on social media and have someone that you never even met it. And maybe they were influenced by those thoughts and they turned to God because of how you lived your life. Now think about a time when someone told you something you didn't want to hear, that it's contrary to your beliefs, but later you realized they were right. Verses 5 and 7 kind of cover this, 5 through 7. It is better to heed the rebuke of a wise person than to listen to the song of fools. Like a crackling of thorns under the pot, so is the laughter of fools. This too is meaningless. Extortion turns a wise person into a fool, and a bribe corrupts the heart. We're human. We want encouragement. We want praise. We want agreement. We want comfort. Difficult as it can be, though, growth comes from correction. It comes from honesty. It comes from the truth. The voice that challenges you is more valuable than the one that just agrees with you. But then he adds something very important in verse 7. Even a wise man can be pulled off course. Pressure, influence, this can twist your judgment. So it's not just about hearing the truth, it's about staying grounded in it. Comfort is easy to listen to, but truth is actually what helps us. And verse 7, it almost feels a little bit contrary to verse 5, but God calls us to choose wisdom over foolishness, but he also reminds us this: we're not as steady as we think we are. And under pressure, even the wise can start acting like fools. Continuing in verse 8 through 9, it says, the end of a matter is better than its beginning, and patience is better than pride. Do not be quickly provoked in your spirit, for anger resides in the lap of fools. The end is better than the beginning. Patience is better than pride. The end of things reveals what the beginning did not. Anyone can start well, and we've all seen that. Wisdom shows up, though, when things are slow, when things are frustrating. Life isn't going your way. Wisdom is revealed over time, not at the start. So the preacher here has shown us where wisdom comes from: reality, corrections, and patience. Then he addresses something that we all struggle with in the next verse. We struggle with how we think about the past. Verse 10 says this: do not say, why were the old days better than these? For it is not wise to ask such questions. We're told to choose wisdom. Then he humbles us, because even the wise can be bent under pressure. And then he gives us an example. Don't say the old days were better, because when life gets hard, even wise people start rewriting the past. Why were the old days better than this? Or better yet, were they? Let's test that idea. When we say things used to be better, what are we actually remembering? I want to walk with you very briefly through just a few moments in time. In the early 1900s, people might say there were strong community ties. We had a simpler life, clear moral frameworks. But we also had no antibiotics, high infant mortality, poverty was brutal, and the world wars were coming. We romanticize simple times, but they're often harder than we imagine. In the 40s, 50s, people might think of family stability, economic growth, national unity, but we also had the trauma of the world wars. We had some racial injustice. We had limited opportunity for many. Stability existed, but not necessarily for everyone. During the 60s and 70s, civil rights progress. We had cultural awareness. But we also had social unrest. We had the Vietnam War. We had growing confusion at times. In the 80s and 90s again, we had economic growth, opportunity, optimism. We also had rising divorce rates, materialism. We had a drift in values. And from the 2000s on, we've had many medical advances. We have unbelievable advances in technology. We even have longer lives. But we also seem to have anxiety, isolation, constant distraction. Brothers and sisters, every era has good, and every era has bad. So when we say things like things used to be better, what we're really doing is remembering selectively, but not necessarily thinking wisely. So if the past isn't better and we don't control life when we think we do, then what does wisdom actually give us? Verses 11 and 12 read as this: Wisdom, like an inheritance, is a good thing and benefits those who see the sun. Wisdom is a shelter, as money is a shelter. But the advantage of knowledge is this: wisdom preserves those who have it. Wisdom is valuable, but it has its limits. Wisdom is like an inheritance. It helps. It protects. It gives guidance, perspective, and stability. But it does not guarantee an easy life. It does not prevent hardship. It does not give you control over the outcomes. A simple way to say it: wisdom helps you live, but it doesn't let you control everything. In verse 13, consider what God has done. Who can straighten what he has made crooked? God is ultimately in control, not us. Consider what God has done. Some things in life are not fixable by us. Some paths are crooked from our perspective. We don't get to straighten everything out. There are things in life God has allowed that we can't fix, we can't change, and we can't control. When times are bad, in verse 14, when times are good, be happy. But when times are bad, consider this: God has made the one as well as the other. Therefore, no one can discover anything about their future. God has given us good days and hard days on purpose. When life is good, enjoy it. When life is hard, stop. Think. Why? Because both kinds of days teach us. They shape us. They keep us aware of God. A simple way to look at it: you don't control the mix of your life. God does. To summarize that, reality teaches us, correction helps us, patience forms us, nostalgia misleads us. Life is not something that you control. It's something that God is shaping. Wisdom doesn't give you control in your life. It helps you live faithfully in the life that God gave you. So what is the wisdom we try to avoid? It's the reality that life isn't in our control, that it's shorter than we think, and that God is using both the good and the hard parts to shape us. We've talked this morning about the wisdom we try to avoid. It is real, limited, and not in our control, and that God is using all of it. The question for each of us is simple. Are we listening? Are we learning from God as showing us, or are we trying to avoid it? If you're here this morning and you haven't given your life to Him, if you've been putting that off, if you know there are things that you need to make right, don't avoid it any longer. If you need prayers, if you need encouragement, or if you're ready to respond to obedience, we invite you forward as we stand and sing.